Ladies and gentlemen, Creepy Gerald, that's me, was just riding a sandworm. Nick is somewhere chasing twisters because he felt it. And our guest this week, Mr. Justin Winters, just logged on to the group chat of a new red room that he found on the dark web. It must be time to talk about the movies of 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Two Peas on a Podcast, where we review the latest and sometimes greatest movies every week. And once a year, we give you our top 5 movies of the prior calendar year. And for the second year in a row, a very special guest, not only a special guest here on the pod, but a dear friend of both of us, Mr. Justin Winters. How are you, brother? Welcome back to the show.
What? I think I only come back for you guys. I hope you guys feel special, because anytime I need to come out of retirement, it's like the bat signal comes up. Let's talk about our favorite movies. I'm excited. I love you guys. What's up?
Was that the last time? Well, I guess you did the movie draft with us like 6 months ago, but before that was it, right?
That's it, man. That's it.
That's it.
Exclusive. We drag Winters out of retirement to make him talk about movies when he doesn't want to.
I'm like both of your Anoras. We're exclusive, and you guys. I got a ring on the finger, so
yeah, it's a throuple, man. It's a throuple. Yeah, hot.
Totally.
Nick, how are you, man? I guess that's just you got a haircut for the show this week.
I knew Winters was going to be here, so I wanted to doll myself up real good. I got to present myself. I don't want to look like a hobo in a garage like some people on this podcast. I gotta.
We have enough of those.
Class it up here. I was excited. We're all wearing red today too. Hey, look at that.
We did it.
We all did the trio there. But no, I mean I'm just now literally within the past day or two starting to feel back close to 100%, and I'm not coughing anymore, which is actually really, really great. I might have a throat clear or two here or there that I'll turn my slider for down. Dan, don't give me your grief. Give it all to Gerald. He deserves it.
Yeah. No, he'll give it to me for sure. Well, you're looking good over there, man. Now, Justin Winters, our dear friend, like I said, he came on and did a movie draft with us a few months ago. Last year, we did this exact same episode for what would have been 2023. This year, we're going to be talking about the movies of 2024. Justin, real quick, I would be remiss if I did not tell everyone that doesn't already know that you're out there in L.A. As we're recording, the city's literally on fire. I mean, it sucks. I was telling you earlier, I've been watching clips of the local news there in L.A., and it's like, aside from you, I've got a bunch of family and friends out there. It's just absolutely insane. Can you give us, how are you guys doing, man? I mean, my heart is just literally going out to so many people out there in California.
Yes. Thank you. My home, we are currently okay. Our home is okay. We have luckily been many miles away from any of the fires, but we have friends dealing with just catastrophic things going on here in the city, and we feel for anyone who's going through that. Again, the fires are still going. We're about to hit some more wind warnings coming up tomorrow night. So we are currently okay. We are thankful for all the fire departments and first responders. People are coming in from, Canada, Mexico to help.
Yeah.
It's been a crazy, several days, but we are extremely lucky. So.
Well, we're thinking about you, man. As like I said, I'm sure Nick's been seeing the coverage too. It's insane. I mean,
the wind is the crazy thing. Seeing the footage of all the wind, just whipping and just torrents and swirls, whirlwinds, twisters, if you will, of ash and flame spinning around out there.
Wait a minute. This guy. No, wait a minute. This guy. I can't do it.
See, I'm on the other.
He's
side
already
of
dropping.
the
He's already
video
dropping
screen
hints.
I'm over here.
Yeah, I know. You're with the Dune backdrop there for the YouTube audience.
I was going to try to segue, but with all that going on, I love movies and I love talking about movies and I love you guys. So this is a break amongst all of the our adrenal glands are shot pretty much, but just to have a break to talk about movies with you guys is awesome. So I appreciate it.
I love it, man, and I love to hear that. And obviously, it's beyond a pleasure to have you back on the podcast every time. You're basically the honorary third P at this point. I mean, I think you probably know that. So we appreciate it, and we're glad to have you back to talk about 2024 in cinema. With that being said, Nick and I had a pretty divisive year on the podcast. I know you listened to a lot of episodes, Justin. You probably know that. But some of my highest rated films of the year, Nick was either lukewarm on or just flat out did not like.
Pieces of shit. You can say the correct phrase.
So we did meet similarly on a few movies here and there, and the ones that Nick was
I think we're
pretty
gonna
high
have
on,
one cross up. I think we're gonna have
was
one
okay
cross up. I
Yeah.
think we're gonna have one cross up in the top 5.
But with that being said, we'll talk a little bit about that if you want before we dive into it. But I wanted to ask winners because, like you just said a minute ago, I mean, you really only podcast twice a year when me and Nick ask you to. So
well,
I know
half the time we club the corpse of So I Married a Movie Geek down an alley and steal ideas from it.
Yeah. What did you think, man? 2024 as a GA member out there, not doing a weekly podcast. I mean, did you go out to the cinema a lot this year? Did you stream a lot? How was the quality this year for you, man?
So I mean, I have an addiction. Like I have a problem. I'm addicted to movies. I grew up in a video store. It's like dyed in it's in my veins. So I always have this need to watch more movies. Unfortunately, my life has been a place where I haven't been able to go to movie theaters as much as I like, but it's like streaming and some of these streaming apps have like become the video store of my day. And
Sure.
like I tried to really pump up my numbers of watching more movies. I got COVID in October, which sucked to have COVID, but as Gerald knows, I'm also like a big horror head, so I love watching scary movies. So I use that as an excuse just to like just watch so many scary. Like my wife was very worried for me. So but all of these streaming opportunities have led me to watch a ton of movies in the past year. And I would say, just from my view, it was one of the best overall years for film in quite a while that I've seen. Like, just like a deep bench of just like, if you use the baseball analogy, triples and above, like just overall, just the quality level in my eyes was really high. And like, it seemed to go from like throughout the year. Like there were movies in the beginning of the year that was like this is usually like a later in the year, awards type movie, but it's here. So I think streaming has really opened up the opportunity for these movies to find people more easily. And I thought it was overall it was an amazing year.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. 2024 cooked. Nick, I don't know what you're doing over there, man. But I want to hear what you have to say before I pass judgment. 2024, in your opinion.
Now, I'm somebody who gives away 5-star ratings like candy because there's no such thing as a perfect film. So I don't reserve 5-star ratings for a quote-unquote perfect film. There's no such thing. But this is probably the first year in a very long time I have handed out not a 1, 0 5-star ratings. This has not been a good year at all for film for me. It has been a dismal disappointment after disappointment for a number of things that I was looking forward to, and for a number of things that I wasn't looking forward to that I just watched and it was just like whatever. But that said, like we're here to talk about the best of the year, and I do have a pretty solid list of movies that surprised me, of movies that moved me, of movies that really invested me a lot more than I thought they would. Looking at my list here and kind of and looking at my honorable mentions and everything. So I mean, was it a movie completely void, or was it a year, completely void of good movies? No. There's definitely some good gems in here, but I mean, a lot of the bigger fare that a lot of, well, I know Gerald's going to have on his list for sure, but a lot of the fare that we've talked about it all throughout the year on the podcast. It not going to be sniffing anywhere near mine. I was so disappointed in so many movies this year.
I'm sorry. Are you saying like I'm a basic white bitch? Is that what you're saying? Like I'm going to bring the basic picks to the podcast today?
I'm pretty sure the second pumpkin spice something came out in the fall.
That's
you
fine.
were on the podcast drinking it.
That's fine. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Pinky's out, buddy. Pinky's out.
So don't
Listen,
pretend you're not a basic white bitch, okay? Winners
Listen,
is up
probably,
there just Winners. We already know you
like,
are, so you just agree, just nod along.
Yeah, he has his big gulp. He's ready to go. Listen, I lean more towards Winters, I think, in this argument because I think my report card for 2024. Now, Winters was talking about having an addiction and having a problem. Thank God for LETTERBOXD. I can actually tell you that I watched 158 new 2024 films last year, some of which I saw after January 1st, but nonetheless 2024 movies. And 3 of them, I gave out 3 perfect scores this year, which will be my top 3 films tonight. And I was actually struggling a little bit with the order, but I landed on what I landed on. And the reason I know this is an amazing year, because much like Nick said, I might give out 1 of those a year, maybe 2. Like, I can't even remember off the top of my head the last year I gave out 2 perfect 10 out of 10 scores. But this year I gave out 3 of them. Last year I think Past Lives was the only one I gave a perfect score to.
Well, that's the funny thing too is last year we were simpatico. We both had the same number 1 of the year. We both like absolutely adored Past Lives. Phenomenal film. So I'm, for us to have diverged so far in 2024, I will caveat my list. Winners, you're here to bear witness to this. 3 of the movies in my top 5 are movies that Gerald did not select for us to review on the podcast. I just want to make that known to everybody listening that Gerald builds the schedule, and even in my honorables, there's even more. So
I look at what's coming out, and I'm like, Nick will hate that. Let's cover it on the show.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like sometimes.
There's a new
but anyway,
Roadhouse
boys,
coming. Get that in there.
Absolutely. I'm a defender of that movie. You know that. All right, boys, let's talk about 2024 in film. We're going to give you, the episode consists of us giving you our top 5 movies of the year. Now, these are our favorites. Obviously, it's our opinions, which is not the best or whatever.
It's the best. It's the best. Take this as the sacrosanct list of the best films of the year, no matter what you hear anywhere else, no matter what other awards voting body decides what. This is the definitive list, folks.
This is it, yeah. Unless it's Nick, yeah, absolutely.
None of this, it's my opinion nonsense. The P's are the authority.
Winners, how you feel, man? You want to take a sip of your big gulp there and get us started. What is your number 5 movie of 2024, brother?
Now, before I get to my pick, let me say that, again, me thinking that it's an amazing year, I had an atrocious time making a top 10, and now Gerald's like, no, top 5. So I'm here to say that pretty much anything on my top 10, you grab me next week. Like, I've been through a roller coaster of emotions the last couple weeks, and I've seen a few of these movies during this time. So grab me in a couple weeks. Any of these might be changed in order in my top 10. That could be my number 1 in like a month or so. So knowing that, my number 5 favorite film of 2024 is the movie that I watched while my city was aflame in the last couple days. And I had to watch it in chunks because there's emergent things going on. I'm checking fires, checking on the kids, but I'm also watching this film, which is like a sumptuous feast of a movie, and that is The Brutalist. So
okay.
if I had to explain this movie to you, it would be a director, and all of my top 5 are showcases for creators. Like, these are films with a capital F, and The Brutalist is just number 5 because it's the one that I watched last, and it's such a long, like, really detailed film that I'm like, I'm gonna have to watch this a couple times to get it all. But I was just blown away. I was literally blown away. If I had to pick one movie out of my top 5 that Nick hasn't seen, I would be like, I would wonder what Nick has to say about this film. Other people I know in the podcast space would be like, this is too long, it's too slow. But I was like, this is like if you combine Godfather 1 and 2 into one, and you have a filmmaker who is really swinging for the fences in terms of, doing, I mean, it's the movie, the whole movie is about the creator versus commerce problem of, how much power should the creator have when it comes to their art, and then you have on the other side money, and how that clashes constantly. And throughout this movie, it does that. Amazing performances from Adrian Brody, Guy Pearce. There are several
in this, man.
Several moments and scenes throughout this movie where I was like gasping for air. This movie is like very long, but it's extremely sexual in parts, and some of those scenes are so just like brutal in the way that they're shown and what the director has done with them, that like I said, I was just kind of flabbergasted by it. So like I said, number 5 could have been my number 1. It's just the latest one I've seen, but I think it's a knockout of a film, and I highly suggest everyone check it out.
Yeah, I'm not as high on it as you are, but I did dig this movie, and I think you're kind of speaking on it already. But the filmmaking aspect of it and the craft of it is just like astounding. I mean, Brady Corbet is most likely going to win Best Director this year at the Academy Awards. His movie is definitely going to be nominated, and a lot of the technical stuff too that goes into making the film. Guy Pearce, I think this is probably the performance of his career, and the dude's been acting forever. I mean, he's just fucking unbelievable in this film. Was easily my favorite part. He was. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I was going to say, and to top this all off, I haven't read too much about the making of the film or what was behind that, but to watch the movie and then see what the budget was, and then it took him 7 years. I'm just like, that's amazing. That's the dream. Like you want to get your movie over the line no matter what, and to have it be this good, I mean, it's an achievement. So.
Well, you mentioned The Godfather. I mean, it's really a callback to those types of films where it's like the immigrant, like kind of sweeping epic of the American dream, and that's, I mean, obviously it's a different story, but it's the same kind of feeling that you get from The Brutalist and kind of imagining what it was like to immigrate here, especially coming off the heels of the Holocaust, like Brody's character does in the movie, and his art essentially being as important as it was and as front and center as it was in Hungary where he was from. But then when he gets to America, it doesn't mean anything. Nobody cares who you are. Nobody cares what you did and what your life's work was, And then he starts to get some of those pieces of himself back as the movie goes on. And without giving anything away, it's a bit of a roller coaster, his journey. And I think it's a beautiful movie. I'm not as high on it as a lot of people, yourself included, just because the length did get me a little bit. And it does drag in certain places. And then I thought that a lot of the decisions that were made on Corbet's part, I don't like using the word pretentious because that's not what I mean. But it was just like Artur. But I don't know. It seemed like he went a little far to make it such a Artur type of filmmaking. Like he used the Vista vision that hasn't been used in 20 years. And like, I mean, it's beautiful. It turned out great,
And what is perfect is this comment you're saying about him is exactly the comments that the character of Adrian Brody hears in the film. It's like, you're going too far.
Exactly, yeah.
You got to pull this back. You're spending too much, whatever. So I just think it's a movie about the immigrant experience, but it's of the now. Like it's a universal story. So it works.
Yeah, great, man. Nick, you have any interest in The Brutalist? This is a big Oscar contender, but it's 3.5 hours. I actually think you would really like this, if I'm being honest. I think you would probably dig this film.
I've never heard of it. Sounds interesting though.
Oh, okay, all right. Adrian Brody, possible front runner right now for the Oscar for it, and I think, like I said, I think Corbet is probably going to win director, and it's going to get a lot of love in the next couple months for sure. So The Brutalist kicking us off, man. Number 5 for winners. Nick, you want to go next? Or you want me to go? It's up to you, man.
You go. It's your show, baby.
All right. So my number 5, like I said, I was kind of playing with the order a little bit in my top 5, but this one was 6 before a couple hours ago when I started messing around with some of these that are pretty tied for me, and I wanted to put this one number 5 because the 43 people or whatever that listen to this, I want them to seek this out when I talk about it, if you haven't seen it yet. But it's a little film called Sing Sing, starring Coleman Domingo and one of my favorite performances of the year, a guy named Clarence Macklin. This is a story about a prison called Sing Sing, or nicknamed Sing Sing, in New York, that had a rehabilitation through the arts program, and prisoners that were in jail there for life or for a numerous amount of years could enter into rehab, but through the performing arts. So they formed like an acting troupe, basically. And they would write their own scripts, and they would cast their own actors, and the inmates would perform for other inmates in the prison and, the warden and the guards and everything. And it went on throughout the year. Paul Raci plays the theater kind of director. And Coleman Domingo is going to be nominated this year for this award, or for the Best Actor award, and he should be. But Clarence Macklin and a lot of the other actors in the film were prisoners at Sing Sing. Since release, they're basically ex-cons who performed versions of their real life selves in this movie. And that sounds like a shtick, but the gravity of that and having to relive arguably the only bright spot in probably the darkest time in their lives is a really emotional thing, man. Like, this is a really deep film, but it's like a feel-good film at the same time. It really lifts up those emotions that you would get from like a really cool sports movie, almost like Rudy or something like that. Like, you just feel like, oh man, I love these guys. I want to carry them on my shoulders out into the football fields, and like, you just kind of feel that way about a lot of these characters, led in my opinion by Clarence Macklin's performance in this film. Have either of you seen Sing Sing? Justin, did you get a chance to see that one?
I'm gutted I haven't seen this. It was on my list. I was trying to speed run things in the last week, and obviously the fires got in the way. But I
Sure, yeah,
off my list.
yeah. It's just such a good dramatic film that just makes you feel grateful for what you have in life, and grateful for the performing arts. You know, I've said on a couple of YouTube videos I've done recently, shouting this movie out for Oscar season, that like, this film is essentially about arts and community and coming together through, for us talking on this podcast, is coming together through film, right? And in their case, when you're in prison, you don't get a chance to see all these movies, So they were performing them for each other to still have this art form to connect to. And it's also a way to rehab them back to society too, from their, previous criminal selves or whatever. So it's a very deep, layered film in that way, with some tremendous performances. And like I said, I couldn't believe, like, I found out after I saw it, with the exception of Macklin, there's like 7 or 8 like key supporting actors in this film that have never acted on camera before, that were like doing it for this movie to basically reenact what they went through for several years. And I was just fascinated by that, because you would have thought that these dudes have like, were cast from whatever. So Hollywood elite, but they've never done it before, with the exception of Coleman Domingo and Paul Raci in the film. So Nick, have you heard of Sing Sing? Are you into this one?
Nope, I haven't heard of it.
Oh my God! Well, you're one of the 43 people that I wanted to make sure to put on the list.
I asked you last week. I asked last week when we did the draft with David Powell. I said, "What are some movies that I gotta watch? Or that I should try to get through."
So it's my fault.
Before we record this episode, and you did not. That was not on the list you gave me. I don't remember.
I can't remember what list I gave you, but I'm surprised I didn't mention this one.
Yeah,
but
so
yeah,
it's
I think it's another one you would
100%
dig.
your fault.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
It sounds
I'm
really
be
good. Like from your description of it, it sounds really, really good. It's definitely something I want to check out.
Yeah, I think so far, I think the 2 that have been mentioned would actually be Nick movies. I think you would dig these for sure. So far, so good. So you're up next, man. Is Sing Sing for me. And what is your number 5, Mr. Haskins?
Well, Gerald doesn't know what a Nick movie is, because again, he omitted 3 of my top 5. He omitted from the list of movies to cover for the show.
And this was defend myself again.
We were like halfway through the year, I think, and halfway through the year, Gerald's like, "Oh man, like my favorite movie of the year right now is this beautiful little indie called Thelma, starring June Squibb, as this amazing 90-year-old grandmother who gets ripped off by some con artists." Malcolm McDowell shows up in this, and she goes on this crazy little adventure with Richard Roundtree, stealing his scooter and everything, like to try to go get her money back, because she feels marginalized by her family. She's elderly, she feels useless, she feels helpless. She's got to have like a little medic alert button and all that kind of stuff, and she kind of takes her agency and goes on this journey. It's really lighthearted, but it's also really touching. Its emotion isn't really forced, which I really appreciate about it. It's not trying to be like overly saccharine or anything like that. It just plays completely natural, and it just portrays this really strong character who just wants a little bit of, like, maybe one last adventure, or maybe just to recapture something in her life that like I said, her family all think she's helpless, and they all have to take care of her, and like she got ripped off, and there's nothing that she can do about it, and she proves them all wrong, and I really love that. The cast of this is phenomenal. June Squibb's in it, Parker Posey's fantastic, Clark Gregg's fantastic, Richard Roundtree, rest in peace. He was phenomenal.
His last
in this.
role. Yeah.
Yeah, really, really. I love this thing from
Yeah, it's
top to
really good.
bottom. This was. I mean, Gerald thinks I don't listen to him, but again, this was
It's
halfway
really
through
good.
the year, so he's like, oh yeah, this movie is my number one of the year right now. So
Hmm.
I checked it out, and I mean, yeah, dude, it's a banger. It's such a good movie.
It's really, really
Winners
good.
has been nodding
Winners,
along like literally the whole way. I'm
did
loving
you
it.
get to catch this one, man? What do you think of Thelma?
Oh yeah, I love this movie. I would have been down for like multiple Thelma movies with just Thelma and Richard Roundtree just like
Oh my God,
solving shit. There's
so good.
that movie has one of my favorite scenes of the year, and it's so random. Is there Richard Roundtree and Thelma are looking to find a gun, and they go to this old woman who they used to know a long time ago, her house, and she is literally like on the edge of death. Like she's barely able to
Yeah,
move.
out of it.
She's watching like some like hummingbird video on TV or something,
Yep.
and
Right.
they like steal this poor woman's gun while probably giving her last conversation with anyone before she dies. And it was a comedy. I was like laughing, but it was really sad. So like that whole movie is just filled with that. By the way, Fred Heckinger is his name?
Yeah, Fred
Is
That's
an
his
Eckinger.
actor
name.
that's
Yep.
in this. He's been in like three huge movies. Like he had a big year, but June Squibb, just the fact that she was able to do like her own stunts in a film is just like that was just like chef's kiss. It was just an easy sit, as I used to call it, just pure joy. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
such a
yeah,
good movie.
easily one of my favorite movies of the year too. And I don't, I know. Did you guys see the credit scene in this? So I don't know how much the story is known, but another reason I love this is because Josh Margolin, the director, the Fred Heckinger character is basically a version of him, and this is based on his actual grandmother, and this actually happened to her when he was like in college or whatever, and she passed away. So everything past a certain point was like fictionalized for cinema, but it was to honor his grandmother. And he
So
basically
good.
made this movie in her memory, which is just such a beautiful thing that you're not really thinking about when you're watching it, but it has that personal touch to it too, which I think is really cool. But it's
Yeah,
definitely
it's
one
a
of my
nice
favorites of the
button.
year too.
It's a nice, powerful little button on the movie when you get the real life scene of her,
You're
of
right.
his actual grandmother in the car, basically like saying the same exact, the final line that June Squibb's character says at the end of it's a nice perfect little button on it. But like I said, it's not a movie like this could have easily dipped into the schmaltz and like the overly saccharine, kind of sappy, really playing for awards kind of thing. Like a film like this could easily go that route, but it didn't. It was very, very lighthearted, very touching. That's my number 5, baby. Thelma. Move it back over to the big dub himself.
Winners, you're up for number 4, man.
all right. If you see me looking down my phone, it's because I'm looking at Letterbox for information about these amazing films. But um, like I said at the top, a lot of my films on my top 5 are movies that kind of you know went an extra there was like an extra gear for some of these filmmakers, I think, where they weren't, it's hard enough to make a movie itself, but it's really really hard to make a great film or an amazing film that has lasting permanence in people's minds, in movies as a whole. So
Hmm.
knowing that, in the vein of The Brutalist, my number 4 is a movie that I just watched in the past week as well, and it is Ramel Ross's Nickel Boys.
Interesting. All right.
Um, so this movie is unlike any film I've ever seen before. Um, it's hard to explain, and it's one of those films where you almost want to say two things. You want to say, I think it's amazing. I think it's a masterpiece, but I really can't explain why I love it because it's very vibes and like you have to just like give yourself into the experience that this creator has amazingly put together. Like I watched this film, and again, just like The Brutalist, there are moments in Nickel Boys where I was just like, I I've never seen anything like this. It is a
Right.
film about two young black teenagers at a reform school in Florida who go through atrocious things, um, and their friendship and their connection throughout it is a theme of hope throughout the film, but the movie is also an indictment of the atrocious things that our government and things that happened in the South during that time. But the reason it's special is the movie is primarily from a POV narrative in frame, meaning you are always seeing from someone's own viewpoint, like in first person, or the camera is directly behind that person, and that's how the story is told. And it is a decision that you could only imagine being how, number one, someone made the decision, and then just like the difficulty level. We're all into video games and stuff. This is like someone just taking the difficulty level on something, again, that's really hard to do, make a movie, and just like pushing it up towards 11. It's amazing this film exists. Like I said, I don't want to talk too much about it other than it's based on a book, and it's one of those movies that I'm like, of course this is a book. It's so rich in text, the characters are so vivid, the scenes are almost Malick like in their patience to let the scene linger. Because it's a point of view film, you're not always seeing the point of view of everything that you think you would see in a normal film. So you're kind of piecing together a story through the viewpoints of these characters. And like I said, I just saw it in the past week. I need to really dive back into it, but I think it's all-time banger of a movie. And Ramel Ross is one of those filmmakers where like this is like I will follow whatever he makes from now on. He is that good. He is that talented. I suggest everyone watch it. It's a very important film. It's called Nickel Boys.
The irony in that, just is I heard a Q&A with him at a Nickel Boys, premiere they did for like FYC or whatever, and he's not a filmmaker. Like he said straight up, he's like, I don't care. I don't want to make another movie. Like, they wanted me to make this. I love the book. So I said, okay, I'll make it if I can film it this way, if I can do it this way, which is what you're talking about. And who knows if the guy will ever direct another movie. He's a professor. He teaches film. He doesn't even want to direct. So I'm sure he will at some point. But it's funny that, it was such a borderline revolutionary thing, the way the film was shot. And to think that he might not even make a movie again is kind of crazy. But, what I love about Nickel Boys is it does, which is kind of like what you're saying, but it does play with that kind of filmmaking. It just changes the way we think we're supposed to watch movies. And I mean, specifically here in America, like, and it plays out in a way where the convention is just shred away. It's like, it's a narrative, but it's told in such a unique, kind of freaky perspective that you really have to get your reins under you when you're watching it. And I wish I had known that going into the movie. Like, I wish you had just told me what you told me before I started watching the movie. Because when you're in it and you get thrown into that and you're not expecting it, I'll say this Nickel Boys, of all the 2024 films that I saw, Nickel Boys is probably the number one movie that I want to watch again. Like, I want to rewatch it knowing what I know about the perspectives and the POV and the camera angles. By the way, the bar scene in this movie with Elwood and I'm forgetting the other guy's name, Turner, I think. The two of them, that scene that takes place in the bar. I mean, man, what an absolute, just one of the greatest hits in terms of movie scenes in 2024. Yeah, it's a good film. I mean, it's a good film. It's just definitely you're going to have to let yourself go in terms of like the conventional movie watching in order to fully enjoy it. But I think it's a great shout out.
I was also going to say both Nickel Boys and Brutus use archive footage within their films in a very interesting way. I mean, they're very like historical, and they place these stories in a specific time, but they are also augmented by here's a newsreel, or here's a bit of radio, and it makes it feel like texturally more real when you're watching it. So.
Right. All right, so I'm up next, right, for my number 4. Nick, you got anything on Nickel Boys? I assume you haven't seen that one either. Have you heard of that one?
This way, again, I always love doing these kinds of things because I always get to kind of flesh out my list of stuff I still need to catch up with from the year.
And so far, I mean, pretty much all the movies that have been mentioned are definitely in awards conversation too, and Nickel Boys is another one too. So that you'll be hearing that over the next couple months a lot more, I would imagine. So my number 4, let's get some horror on here, guys. Let's get some horror movies. You know I'm going to have a couple of them at least in my 5, even more so when we get to my honorable mentions. My number 4 is a movie that I saw prior to what would be considered the hype. It opened, luckily, in my city when it opened in theaters. I hadn't heard a lot about it. I hadn't read anything about it. I had seen one trailer that was super vague. It was a very quick, like 1 minute trailer that didn't really give anything away. It was high energy. I love the filmmaker, and I love a lot of the actors in it, so I knew I was going to go see it, and it's horror, of course. I went to see this, and I got to tell you guys, of all the movies I'm going to mention tonight, this is the one that left me sitting in my theater seat, literally mouth agape. Like, I was just like jaw on the floor for so many different reasons, but it's Coralie Farjah's The Substance is my number 4. This movie is the most bonkers, fucking crazy. It's a commentary on aging out and, kind of being past your prime. In this case, it's Demi Moore, a woman that's in the spotlight as kind of this aerobics talk show host. And she's older now, and they want to replace her with a younger star that's hotter, which is why they cast her initially in the 90s or whatever it was in the film. And so that's where her kind of mind starts to bend. And then we get this sci-fi element and this substance that this character can take to essentially clone herself as a younger, quote-unquote, better version. And that ends up being the Margaret Qualley character, who was also phenomenal in this film as Sue. And, never forget, you are one. So there's a lot of rules that go along here. And if Demi Moore or if Margaret Qualley break the rules of The Substance, then crazy shit starts to happen to them physically and in their personal lives. So the third act of the film is essentially a Cronenberg-level, gross, fucking body horror extravaganza. Blood, pus, fucking weird eyeballs and shit. I mean, just the craziest shit that I've ever seen on the big screen. I'm not even joking. I mean, I've seen a lot of Cronenberg shit. I mean, there's elements of The Fly in here, with Goldblum, so you can think about that kind of stuff. But on just leveled up. I mean, this is and the performances don't even get me started. I mean, Demi Moore just won the Golden Globe for this. She's probably going to be nominated for the Oscar. Margaret Qualley's phenomenal. Dennis Quaid is a fucking memorable sleazeball in this movie, eating shrimp with the camera close up on his mouth, fucking pounding these cocktail shrimp, which might be the scariest scene in the movie, actually. The Substance, for me, I mean, it's one of the more memorable experiences I had in the cinema this year, if not the most memorable. And it was just so fucking wild, man. What an absolute ride I could just go on for days. It was just such a good film. I love the performances. I love the aesthetic. The Substance for me. Who's seen it? Who wants to speak on it? Anybody?
I've got one word. Love.
Ah, okay. So you've seen it at least. So that's good. Nick, I know you've heard of The Substance. Demi Moore's getting gold for this lately, man. Are you into this one? It's horror, but
this is unequivocally the least subtle movie of all time.
Yeah.
Legitimately the least subtle movie of all time. Didn't make my top 5. I did enjoy it.
Okay.
I did enjoy it, but it's a little long for me. It goes a little bit long. Like it's kind of like a weird, like if Aronofsky and Cronenberg had a baby, kind of
Sure.
weird thing in that sense.
Sure.
Like it's I mean, performances are fantastic. Demi Moore fantastic. Margaret Qualley's fantastic. I mean, again, like the least subtle movie of all time. Dennis Quaid plays a scumbag, chauvinistic male character named Harvey. I mean, it's legitimately not subtle in terms of its messaging about not just aging and what we'll do to kind of avoid that whole conversation about aging, but also just all the things that women are forced to deal with in terms of a male dominated society. So I'm still honestly, because I watched it today, and I'm still digesting the ending, because the ending literally, like, imagine you're watching a movie and like it's a racing movie, right? But then at the end of the movie, they just floor the throttle as hard as humanly possible, and it just goes so so like I in one hand, I commend the just absolute middle finger to, male dominated society, to chauvinism, to all those different things. I celebrate it, but on the other hand, I'm like, maybe a bit much, but but then again, like, that's the movie it wanted to be. So like, I respect the choice too. You know what I mean? So
Hell yeah.
it's, yeah.
And
There's so much good. There's so much good about it that it's. But like I said, the least subtle movie of all time, giant ass billboard right outside of her apartment that has the other girl on it, like literally the whole time, just staring back at her. I mean, just.
Yeah.
But you got to buy legitimately. Like, I saw like a bunch of reviews lambasting this movie, man. But you got to be buying what this movie's selling, like pure, like, point blank. You got to be.
So
It's
I know
wild
winners
it's
might
out
be,
there, but it's not. Like I said, it's a good watch. It's a real good watch.
I know winners might want to hold some commentary since it sounds like I might come up in it a little bit. I will just tell anyone, if you haven't seen, I think it's 2017 or 2018, a movie called Revenge, which was Coralie Farjah's first film, which was also in the horror realm, but it's a little bit more of a thriller, was brilliant. And that was her debut. And I knew when I saw that, which I saw at my local Alamo here and didn't even know what it was. And I was like, this is going to be she's going to fucking go places. So I'm not surprised that her follow-up was The Substance, because it was a lot that we got in Revenge, but it was definitely kicked up a notch.
She
here
has
with
a
The
hell of a
Substance.
vision. I'll
For
give
sure.
this one. It's an absolute hell of a vision. Like, I have not watched a movie probably since Love Lies Bleeding, like way earlier in the year, that was shot so deliberately and with such an eye for exactly what she wanted to do.
Exactly.
It's got that level of artistry to it that I think is top tier in terms of filmmaking. Really is.
That's a great comparison for sure. Rose Glass, they're pretty similar in terms of their visionary style for sure. I like that shout out. I'm also proud of you for watching a horror movie on your own. Hey,
listen here again. Gerald does not know what a Nick movie is, like, unequivocally. Unequivocally.
Well, tell us what a Nick movie for your number 4 is, man. You're up next.
All right, so this is, I mean, speaking of movies I just watched today, I literally finished watching this movie just 5 minutes before I got into the StreamYard call to do this movie, and it's because it stuck the landing so perfectly. I'm riding on like a 3.5 to 4, like somewhere in that kind of realm as I get in there to it, and I'm like, if you don't stick the landing, Eastwood, it's going to land in the bottom for me. But if you stick the landing on this, juror number 2, baby.
Dude, nice pull, brother.
Unbelievable how good this movie is, and how much, like, me as a viewer, right? Like, and this is the fantastic thing about it. I mean, this cast: Nicholas Hoult, Toni Collette, J.K. Simmons, Zoe Deutsch popping up in here, Kiefer Sutherland. So good to see Mr. Jack Bauer popping up in something, even if he is a little bit of a smaller role. Performances in this are all fantastic, but I think the great thing about this movie is it's an onion, man. You peel back another layer, you learn something else about one of these other characters. You learn the way that they're approaching this case, or the way that they're understanding these different things, and all these kinds of different things. And it as a viewer, I think the great thing about it is it kind of constantly changes the way that you view everything you've seen in the movie, and it kind of changes your perspective on what when you get to the end of the movie, or when you don't get to the end of the movie. And I don't want to spoil anything in case winners, have you seen it? Gerald, have you seen it? Well, Gerald, I know you've seen it because I saw you checked it out on Letterboxd. But
I saw it, and I so far I'm gonna say something when you're done. But I love this pick.
Winners, have you seen it? Because I don't want to talk about it if you haven't seen it.
No, not only have I seen it, let me read out my tweet right when I got done watching it. My tweet was, TNT still exists, right? Cool, because juror number 2 is about to become their new 24/7 programming blog. It is the perfect TNT movie. It is like the throwback to those 90s, thriller type, legal type movies we used to love. And I mean, Eastwood is old as dirt, and he only does like 2 takes for every shot. I'm like, this is amazing. This is a miracle. This movie exists. So I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, one of the funniest like quick reviews I saw for it that actually is true, and it's one of the reasons I love it, is like, this is your dad's favorite 90s courtroom drama, but in 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's like you said, Midnight in the Garden, Good and Evil, A Time to Kill. You know, a lot of movies, honestly, that Eastwood did, to be frank, and he went back to his roots here. I mean, Nicholas Holt also had a fucking just unbelievable year. We were talking about Fred Heckinger earlier, but Nicholas Holt was just home run after home run. I don't know what WB did with this movie. I don't know why they didn't release it. Nick, you and I talked about that when the news was released about that for possibly being Eastwood's last film, and they didn't give it its national release, and it went to Max like a month later. I don't know. It was the
I
whole
mean,
thing's crazy, but
it sticks the landing so well. You know,
Yeah.
the most important thing I didn't want to happen, and spoilers. If you haven't watched this movie, watch this movie. Don't listen to this part. Skip ahead like 90 seconds. But it I love that it does not answer the question. Like, that's a good movie to me. That's good movie making to me, because I can rewatch that movie and I can have a half a dozen different thoughts about it. And that's the great thing about a movie like this, is you're never sure. And I think that's I think I could rewatch this movie tomorrow and probably take a completely different perspective on it. Winters has got his hand up. He's got to get in here.
Oh man, my mother-in-law watched this movie before me, and her main complaint was the ending of the movie, and she's like, "You don't know what happens," and so I went into the movie knowing that, and then I watched it, and I'm like, "You know exactly what happens. What are people so confused about? Like, this is amazing. It's not open-ended at all. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, Toni Collette also amazing, doing a Southern accent. I just like the whole
and her,
movie was just amazing.
and her and Nicholas Holt reunited too, because I think one of his very first film roles, she played his mom. Was it About a Boy, or I think it
Yep,
was About a
about a
Boy,
boy.
right? Yeah, she played his mom, and now here they are back together working on this film, which I thought was a really cool reunion thing too. But yeah, this is one of the like hidden gems of 2024, and I'm really glad it got a shout out. So I think that's a great pick. Winners, what do you think, man? We're getting into your top three, buddy. What do you got at number three over there?
Oh, okay. We're still in the realm of, I think the theme is creators, like, Clint Eastwood, a creator, again, really old. They, who know what this movie is going to be? It still was a home run in my
I
view.
got
But
like the geriatric list tonight. I got June Squibb. I got Clint Eastwood. Man,
You do, you do.
um, my number three is also for one of my favorite creators. He's a guy who has made some really amazing films that I love. He is also very attuned to the theme of class and exploring class in his films in a unique way. And so my number three is Sean Baker's Anora,
Hell
which
yeah.
I know is a movie that Gerald also loves. I've been
Ding ding
a
ding 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 ding.
Sean Baker fan since Starlet. Look it up. That was his
Yeah,
one of those early ones about sex worker here in the Valley, where I currently sit. But the Florida Project, Tangerine. If no one's ever seen Tangerine, I lived
really
a
really
block
good.
away from that donut shop when that movie came out. An amazing film. But I feel like all of these films have led us to this point of Honora, and watching it and being such a big Sean Baker film, I could see all the pieces. Like he was like, gathering all the Infinity Stones
Mm-hmm.
to put in his glove, and it's a knockout of a movie. It's
Yeah,
got a all-timer performance from Mikey Madison. It's got a guy who's at the top of his craft, just dizzying movement from his camera, cinematography, the relentless pace of this film. I know people have compared it to like the anxiety dread of something like Uncut Gems, which is also a movie I love. It is explicit in parts. Like, this is not one that you go up to the AMC with your grandma. But it's um, it's unlike any of his other movies in a way that just it's almost like three movies in one. You have the setup of this amazing character that you get to know, and you are thrown into this Cinderella-esque story of a it's almost like brutalist in a way of someone who just takes the ride of experience, like someone of a lower class being brought into the room with people who are way richer than them and just trying not to drown amongst all the things that are going on within the film. I think it is just an amazing film. Like I said, 2024 is a year of creator-led films and people kind of swinging for the fences. And I think Sean Baker really swung for the fences in this one. And I think he gets, like I said, a top tier performance from Mikey Madison, but also from the rest of the cast. It just really solid performance throughout. And has we're talking about juror number two's ending. Honora has an ending that people are still talking about, and you could read many different ways, and it's gutting when you watch it. And I've haven't stopped thinking about it since I saw the film. So number 3, Honora, love it. Amazing film.
Nick, have you seen it?
No, sir.
All right. I'll go ahead and give you my commentary too, then winners, because this is also my number 3. And if you listen to the top of the broadcast, all the films left on my list are 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, bangers, perfect in terms of my enjoyment of them and what they, how they made me feel when I saw them. Honora, you said it beautifully. I mean, I know Nick hates on Uncut Gems, but not narratively. It's not like Uncut Gems. But that frantic, visceral style of anxiety-fueled filmmaking that the Safdies gave us in that movie, we get essentially that in the second half of this film. And the first half I've equated to like Pretty Woman. I mean, you mentioned Cinderella, but, this rich Russian dude, wants her to be his girlfriend for a week and pays her thousands of dollars to do so, takes her on his private jet to Vegas, and she's living the dream. And, when that week comes and goes, it kind of starts to turn into a little bit more of a nightmare for her, and the stakes are raised so high, and the whole time it's us on this journey with Annie, Honora, that we've become so close to through the first half of the film. And Sean Baker and of course Mikey Madison did such a great job of we are with her, like we are attached to her, and we care about her outcome. And it's a hard thing to get that symbiotic union between director, screenplay, and the performance, in this case Mikey, to give the viewer that. Like you're always worried about the outcome of that particular character. And then when it climaxes at the end there, like you mentioned, I mean, you're heartbroken, but at the same time you're going, why am I heartbroken? Like what does this mean for her? Where is she going next? Is she walking up the stairs? Is she leaving in the car? Is she and you don't know. I mean, very similar to juror number 2 in that way. Like you are left to your own devices to kind of make that up for what your hopes for that character are. And it's a beautiful piece of storytelling, especially for somebody like me who does love Sean Baker, but I wasn't as high on Red Rocket, which was filmed before this or was that before the Florida Project? I can't remember.
Red Rocket was last.
Yeah. So I was glad to see him come back because I did love Florida Project. I did love Tangerine that you mentioned. I wasn't as high on Red Rocket. I didn't hate it, but it was like, not the 4 or 5 star movie that I usually get from Baker, to my liking. But Honora brought him back. It obviously is one of my favorite films of the year. I think it's deserved of all the awards recognition it's been getting. I think Demi Moore is giving Mikey Madison a run for her money, but in any other year, she walks away with it for what she did in that movie because that's a performance. She's 25 years old, by the way. I mean, it's not like she's acted in these big blockbuster or with these really auteur directors before. And she came in there, and like I said, she carried that entire, not just narrative, but she carried that entire feeling of that film. And if that performance is not on point and is not as charming and charismatic and alluring as it is, then it is going to be a little bit more like Red Rocket for me. But we got the other side of that here because of her performance. So I agree with you, man. It's also my number 3, Nick. It's one that I think you would really, really like. And I don't know if this one's streaming it or not. Winners, I'm not sure if you know, but I saw it in the theater when it came out.
I got a screener, so I got a special screener.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, a truly all gas, no brakes film. Like just you're in for the ride. Buckle up, and
yeah, that's a good one.
Really works.
It's a
I
good
mean,
one.
I did love the Florida Project, so it sounds like something I should definitely check out.
All right, man. What do you got at number 3 over there, Nicholas?
All right. Well, this movie would have had to try really, really, really hard to not win me over. Once again, Gerald was like, "No, Nick, we're not going to review this on the show, even though it stars Florence Pugh." And
Ooh.
he's like, "No, we're not gonna do the Florence Pugh movie where she's a chef on the show, because why would we do that?
Well,
Let's watch
in fairness,
Roadhouse.
I didn't know she was a chef till I saw it.
Let's
You
watch
know what I mean? We'd
Roadhouse
already played it.
instead, with Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor starring in a different movie in his own.
And
head.
what you don't know is Florence Pugh's a chef in that also. She's just not credited.
Oh, she's not. Okay. So this one's Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. We Live
Sure.
in Time. I really, really, really love this movie. I
this
don't
was-
think that this plot structure works necessarily in the film. It was kind of I mean, I had recency bias with juror number 2, so I didn't want to put it too high. And Thelma, I really, really enjoyed this one. I really, really love the performances are sensational. I mean, their chemistry is absolutely off the charts. I mean, their performances in this movie are absolutely sensational. I dislike the nonlinear narrative in this case, though. I don't think it works 100%. Because I think the fault of a movie with a nonlinear narrative, when it's used in cases like this, is eventually you have to put it back on the rails of a linear narrative. And I think that unless you're willing to play around in that space the whole time, then you've got to either commit or not commit, and it's almost like they got cold feet halfway through. That notwithstanding, though, and the fact that no one, like literally no movie couple ever can have a baby under normal circumstances, like I always love watching movies. It's one of the things that I pegged in movies. I know I've seen a lot of movies like that before, but it's one of the things I pegged in movies more this year than any other year. Just people having babies in just the weirdest ass places, because you got to create some kind of drama with it. You can't just be like, all right, we had the baby, we're at the hospital, wah, wah. Like, no, it can't be anything like that. But I mean, it's such a this beautiful, like, amazing connection between these two characters. And just, I mean, the thing that I keep going back to with this film, and I keep thinking more and more about it, is this heartbreaking choice that Pugh's character has to make at one point in the film. That, you know, when events play out as they do, I don't want to get too spoilery if people haven't seen it. You got to check it out. But I mean, it's heartbreaking, like, just, and especially that's where the nonlinear narrative works for it, because it's like you already know what choice she's made, and then they're going back to the moment when she makes the choice, and it's like it's really tough to watch in that sense. I think I love this so much. Perfect, quiet little romantic drama with some comedic elements and different things like that. It's really, really good. I love this one.
Winners, have you had a chance to see this one?
So I stalked both of your letterboxes in the past week and like looked at the movies that you had highly rated,
There's
and there were
so
a couple
much.
of them. There were a couple of them I put on my list, but there was one one notable one for Gerald that I was like, this will probably make me cry. I'm gonna avoid this, and then this is the other one on Nick's list. I'm like, this sounds like this will make me cry, and I don't know if I have the tears for something like this right now, but it's definitely at the top of my list soon. So it sounds great.
Yeah, look, it's emotional, man. I mean, Nick nailed it. I mean, this is a good flick that kind of surprised me. Me and my wife went to see this on date night because she didn't want to see any of the weird horror shit that I wanted to see. So we went to see this, and, you know, in my head, I'm going, Florence Pugh's in it, so the joke's on you. But okay, let's go see it. And I also love Garfield. I mean, you mentioned their chemistry. I mean, it's just
Off the chart.
perfect in this movie. Not only the chemistry from like a sexual nature and them kind of like falling in love, but also like when you're talking about that nonlinear stuff with their marriage too. Like they really were believable as that couple that was arguing or having those conflicts with what they were deciding to do on a personal level. Because of course, without spoiling anything, her character is going through something a lot deeper than he can probably realize what to do with as a husband. And I thought they both did a really good job at kind of portraying that relationship and what that would be like if that was something you faced in your marriage. So I think, did you, Nick, were you on board with the ending of this film? Did you like the way that kind of, because we're talking about endings, and this was another one where it was kind of like, I don't know, maybe a little too cookie cutter as far as the ending goes.
No, I think that, again, to kind of go back to what I was talking about before, like it happens earlier on in the film when she makes the choice that she makes. When she makes that choice, you already know how it's gonna play out. You already know, because the film's playing with nonlinear stuff and it's throwing scenes out of order at you, so you already know how it's gonna play out. It amplifies the heartbreak of that decision that much more for me. I
Sure.
love it in that sense. The nonlinear narrative. I think they needed to lean into it harder. I think they did really well with it in some parts, but then, like I said, they kind of abandoned it in the last act of the film. It's kind of it's just on the rails, like straightforward at that point. Like it doesn't jump around chronologically anymore at a certain point. And I think that's to its detriment. I think they really could have kept playing in that sandbox of playing with the nonlinear stuff. Because, like I said, when she gets to that point, when she has a choice to make, and like I said, when she makes it, like you as a viewer, like you just get this pit in your stomach. You're just like, that's what heightens the drama of the rest of the watch, though. And I think it was the only way it could end. Let me say that. I think it ended the way that it needed to, based on all that unfolded earlier on in the film.
Yeah, I think it's a good pick. I think it was a quiet little romantic drama that, I mean, it was successful for the most part, but A24 released it, and it's one of those that's kind of lesser talked about that I think has some great performances, and you should definitely seek out if you love that kind of like family drama type film.
Yeah.
So that was your number 3, which brings us to our runner-ups. Mr. Winners, number 2. Now, you stole my 3 from me, so you mentioned my 3 before I got to mention it. Are you going to do that again? Because we always kind of, we're kind of here, so I'm nervous. What do you got at number 2, man?
Okay. Again, swinging for the fences. One of my favorite things that I've started doing in the last year in terms of film is I try not to watch trailers.
Okay.
Really enjoying being surprised by things lately. And in that vein, somewhere in the middle of the year, I forget when it was, I saw a tweet. I'm always on the tweets looking for
Yeah,
new
you
things
are.
to watch. And someone suggested a movie that I'd never even heard of. And they're like, you have to watch this now. Watch this now. And I literally watched it now. And I was like, oh my fucking God. And
Yeah.
I instantly texted Gerald and I'm like, you have to watch
Okay.
this now. And the movie I'm talking about is Pascal Plant's Red Rooms.
Oh my
So
God, what a fucking mind fuck this thing is. Oh my God, so good.
here's this is like this could be like this is a fastball like right in my wheelhouse of love. I would explain to someone as Fincher-esque if David Fincher had a lot more patience.
And talent.
It's Alexa. Oh my God.
This fucking guy.
I had Fincher on my list last year, I think. I love Fincher.
Yeah, I do
But
too.
Red Rooms is another, like I feel like I've been saying this a lot with like Nickel Boys and The Brutalists. It's unlike any movie I've seen before. It's like you take a little bit of Anatomy of Fall and the courtroom scenes of Anatomy of Fall. That was one of my favorite parts of that film, and trying to figure out the complications of this legal case. Red Rooms has a little bit of that. It's got a little bit of like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, but better Fincher. And then it's got this really dark, like, I mean, I hate to reference 8mm with Nicolas Cage, but
Oh, I see
it's
it.
got that
Banger.
it's got like that like skeevy type, like Red Rooms is
Voyeur
like
stuff, yeah.
you watch it and your skin crawls, but you're not really seeing anything. It's just the thought of things throughout this film. It's the director uses very very long takes. Like this film is not, like I said, this is not a cut it up like mini takes film. You are like luxuriating in some of these scenes that are making you feel very very uneasy. And it's also a film that again I had not seen the trailer for, and I recommend anyone who wants to see it just watch it clean, because you really don't know what's going on for half the movie. You're literally like stuck, like at the beginning of the movie you're following this main character in the film, and you really don't know what's going on. So you have to like kind of pick the pieces up as you go. And there's a point in the middle of this film where as a movie fan, I felt like I was like levitating. Like
Mhm.
I've never seen a movie do something so just like out of left field that made me feel such, I don't know, how would you call it, like
And
disgust,
for and yeah,
aghast, like
and for that character too, and for that character, and what we were used to. I was going to look up her Kellyanne for Kellyanne's character in that film, who we're following
yeah.
predominantly.
that-
You're talking
So
about the courtroom
that
cosplay, which is what I call it, which was a fucking
yeah.
holy shit.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead, finish up. Sorry.
It blew me away. It blew me away. I've never seen this actress. Her name is Juliette Gariupi.
Yep.
Garipi, I'm probably pronouncing that, but it's another, and similarly to Mikey Madison, you haven't heard of, like, you've heard about Red Rooms maybe, but this one is going under the radar, and I'm still trying to figure out why. I think it was released in Canada last year, but that's it. And then all of a sudden, it just like comes out of the blue here in the States, and people started talking about it. And I just
Hmm.
think like similar to all these other things that we're talking about in the Oscar race and all these things, I think this movie should be up there. It really says something about the situation we're in as a country in terms of these illegal dark web, uh, crypto,
Hmm.
the need to be voyeurs and see things that would make your hair turn white. There are people out there that you know
Is
are
their
fucked up
daily like
in the head.
sitcom that they watch basically?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And this movie's all about that.
Yeah.
It's an excellent film.
I agree. I agree. I think it's beautifully shot. It does remind me a lot of David Fincher, Stanley Kubrick, like those types of filmmakers that were obviously very unsettling in their style too. But I see it more as homage. But what I was going to say about Red Rooms is also I love and you're right. It takes about halfway or even three-quarters of the way through the movie before you really kind of start to realize it. But at least for me, I was like, okay, this is a commentary on our obsession with true crime, essentially. Like, she's obsessed with this serial killer that's on trial to the point where it's literally ruining the rest of her life. Like, she's losing her job, her friends, like, this girl that she'd become roommates with basically leaves because, like, she's like, you're a fucking weirdo. So, like, her whole life that was pretty, you would think, pretty successful. She was like a top model and she was doing these modeling gigs and had a lot of friends. And, like, all that was just, like, engulfed by her obsession with this character and what he may or may not have done in what these dark web things are referred to as red rooms, which let's just say there's a lot of fucked up shit that goes on in these rooms that you can quote unquote watch on the dark web if you have access to do so. And she kind of made it her goal to see that shit. I guess in a way she was trying to rationalize with herself to like maybe solve the case in her own mind or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think she was just
I feel like
obsessed
you're
with it.
saying too much. I feel like you're
Yeah.
saying too much, man. I feel
I
like
mean,
again,
I can stop.
I'm almost like I said, it's if you like that type of stuff, if Fincher, if you're into true crime, again, but if watching this, you
Yeah.
might, it might be like a mirror up to your face, and you might feel bad about
Yeah,
yourself. But
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
it
No, that's
it,
good. It's
it
good
it's
shit, man.
it's stuck with me. That's why it's my number two. I highly suggest everyone check it out.
Good shout out, Red Rooms. Check it out. I think it's on Shutter right now, by the way, horror fans. So check it out if you want to see something that'll, I don't know, maybe make it tough for you to go to sleep tonight, but check it out. All right, my number two, my runner up. All right, here we go. I got a couple quotes here for you guys from a couple well established individuals that you guys will recognize these names, okay? Filmmaker Steven Spielberg. You guys heard of him? Steven Spielberg said about this movie, this is one of the most brilliant science fiction films I have ever seen. All right, hold on a second. James Cameron, you guys know that dude? James Cameron said pure cinema when he saw this. His favorite movie of 2024. Let's see what else I got. I had one more I wanted to shout out here. Christopher Nolan said that the film is miraculous. And he said if the first film is essentially Star Wars, then this film is The Empire Strikes Back, which, need I remind you, is often considered one of the greatest sequels of all time. My number 2 is the fucking masterpiece, spectacle of cinema from Denis Villeneuve, Dune Part 2. And if you disagree with me, Nick, I have a sandworm that I will do the remainder of the podcast while riding in my garage. Dune Part 2.
I just
Justin,
want to see. I want to
you
see.
seen it?
I want to see that happen. Get up on that sandworm, baby.
And by the way, the graphics behind Nick, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm in this film, so that's another reason why I have an attachment to it.
That's what it is.
Dude, Winters, have you seen Dune 2 before? I don't want to go crazy if you haven't seen it.
I've seen you too. Yes.
Okay, all right. So I know this is a middle film, right? At a minimum, it's a middle film. Okay, we're supposed to get Dune Messiah, I think in 2026. I think. Obviously, we had the original Dune from Villeneuve during the COVID era, which was kind of weird. It was like one of those home to theater releases at the same time or whatever. Dune 2, in my opinion, I equate it to Nolan's Oppenheimer last year. This is a movie that you go to the cinema, whether it's IMAX or whatever, but it's a big screen, to experience cinema, to experience all the things that can be achieved in the craft of filmmaking, whether it's cinematography, sound, the production design of this film, the fucking costumes and makeup, all the things that went into this so beautifully, I think. And then, of course, on top of that, you're thrown in the direction, but the performances, I mean, Timmy C is my fucking guy. I will tell you right now, Chalamet I will ride with him to death up the mountain. I mean, that is my guy right now in Hollywood. I also loved him in A Complete Unknown. It didn't crack my top 5, but I thought his performance in that was one of the best of the year as Bob Dylan. But in Dune Part 2, man, it's just a spectacle of cinematic achievement. And I think, for my money, there's one other film that I think rivals it in terms of the craft of filmmaking, and that's my number 1. And we'll get there in a minute. But other than that, this was the most impressive thing I saw this year on the big screen. Nick, we did an episode on it. I think you gave it a 5 or something. What do you want to say about that?
I mean,
Go ahead.
It's a piece of shit. It's garbage. It's absolute ass. It's real pretty. It's real pretty, and it's got great performances. Yeah. This is the most empty goddamn story I think I have ever seen on screen, spread across 2 parts. I don't know if it's Villeneuve's fault. I don't know if it's who co-wrote this with him, John Spates, or I don't know if it's just Frank Herbert's fault. And Dune as a whole just sucks. I've never read the novel, so I can't say for one way or another. The most empty bunch of ass garbage shit I've ever seen in my entire life. It's absolutely I hate it.
By the way, I forgot to mention before I hear what Winters thinks, the most fuckable popcorn bucket also this year.
It did. So, it does have the most fuckable popcorn bucket. That is very, very true.
Winters, what do you think, man? Dune Part 2. Where are you leaning? Are you leaning G or are you leaning Nick here? What are you leaning?
Well, as we all know, Nick has 2 views of film. It's either the best one ever or it's absolute shit. I think when I don't drink anymore, but when I used to drink, I remember having conversations over podcasts, just asking, like, Nick, why? Like, why don't you this fill in the blank film? And like us going back and forth. You can't change Nick's mind on movies like this. And that's all a preface before I say I'm kind of on Nick's side on this one.
Okay.
Not that it sucks. I'm kind of just in the middle on Dune. It's one of those where I'm just like, maybe I just don't get, like, it's just not, I don't get Dune, you know?
Okay.
I recognize,
it's definitely weird, yeah.
But other than Nick, I do recognize the craft involved, and I do recognize, like, some of the performances I thought were cool. Actually, Villeneuve was like a huge blind spot across the board for me until this year. I watched all his movies this year, and I'm more of a Sicario guy. Like, give me 20 Sicarios. Yeah,
good stuff. Good stuff.
But Dune and all this sand stuff and worms. There were 2 movies involving sandworms where at the end I was just like, you know. And Dune was one of them. So, like I said, don't hate it.
Sandworms.
Kind of like in the middle on Dune.
Okay, well, I'll be out here on my island. That's fine. You know, I got. What do I have? Cameron, Spielberg, and Nolan backing me up, so I'm fine.
Hey, I also want to point out that James Cameron also endorsed Terminator Genesis when it came out. And was like, oh yeah, you're gonna love this movie. If you love my Terminator movies, you're gonna love this piece of shit. don't start parading Cameron out here as a.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned that.
Villeneuve slipped him a 20 under the table, and he was like, "It's the greatest movie I've ever seen."
It's funny you mentioned that about Cameron because I heard him praising Amelia Perez the other day on a podcast, and I was like,
God,
"Oh no, we're cooked as a society. What are we doing?"
Jesus
okay,
Christ. Penis
no
through vagina.
No spoilers for anybody's number one. Sorry. Okay, runner-ups. That was my number 2, Dune Part 2. I had to do it, and you'll find out the movie that leapfrogged it for me when we get there. But Nick, you're up next for your runner-up, man. What do you got?
I want to ask Justin Winters a very, very specific question about my runner-up here. Winters, how many ways do you think there are to shoot the sport of tennis? Because let me tell you, bud, Luca Guadagnino found them all and then
He
some.
explored them. Yeah.
In Challengers. I love this movie. Now, talk about a non-linear narrative that we just talked about with We Live in Time. This movie uses it to absolutely perfect effect. Every time you think you know what's going on, every time you think you understand the motivations of one of these characters, bam, we flash back or we flash forward to a different scene at a different point in their history together, and we see some completely different thing that completely recontextualizes everything. I love that nobody's really the protagonist or the antagonist of this film. These are all very flawed, very fully well-rounded characters. Zendaya is a masterclass in this. I love her so much. This, to me, was like a step above a lot of the other performances I'd seen this year. Josh O'Connor's fantastic in this. Mike Faye's fantastic in this. Like I said, I think the best thing about this is kind of, I mean, it's literally a tennis match of a movie because it's constantly what you're siding with this guy and you're like, man, this other dude's a piece of shit. And then you see something else and you're just like, it constantly, and I think that's its genius. It constantly recontextualizes itself over and over and over again, all the way through until you get to the ending. Another thing like this, like we talked about before with endings where, who won the match at the end. And I really, really love, where this film leaves all three of these characters, because I don't think there's a good answer that you could potentially have given here. But I mean, I know you were real high on this one too. But I see Winters nodding along, so I got to hear what he thought about this one.
Yeah, Winters, what did you think, man?
When we used to do our podcast, Chrissy and I had this phrase for movies that just like the hair on the back of your neck stands up. We call it movie boners, and this Challengers is just prime movie boners material. This is my number 7 of the year. I think it has one of the best scripts of the year. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, this would make a fucking amazing stage play. Like, this is a three-hander,
sure, yeah.
Rich characters. It's about something universal, the drive to be the best at whatever you want to do, and how that can totally fuck up your life at the same time. It's the first time I've ever seen Josh O'Connor in the movie. I was like, this guy is the bee's knees. He fucking rocks. And I'm just like, people were talking about all these other awards contenders, and I'm like, I don't hear much Challengers love, but you know what they did give some love to? The amazing fucking score for this film.
So good.
By it just amazing. Just it's a great film. So
yeah, I agree. We covered it on the podcast. You guys know I love it. I mean, you guys nailed it. Zendaya, so much.
Sensational. I love that. He sat down with his cinematographer and everything, and he was like, "How can we make tennis not suck?" Because you can't just have the same exact camera angle the whole movie of a tennis ball going back and forth. So they got the camera in the ball. They got the guys wearing the cameras running back and forth. They got the top-down shot. Yeah, the shot from underneath it, and it's like a see-through court and everything like that. They're like, how many different ways can we possibly shoot tennis to keep the audience from being like, holy shit, the tennis? And it really, really works. Like, it's really, really inventive in that way, because Guadagnino is aware that it's a tennis movie, and it's not necessarily built to appeal to a broad film-going audience, but he keeps you engaged legitimately the whole way through it. I love this movie. And I mean, again, chef's kiss to Zendaya. She's sensational in this.
Yeah, she's my favorite part of it performance-wise, but I do love the like three-headed performances in this movie too, and how each one of them plays the good guy and the bad guy at different points throughout the movie, and that makes you kind of guess who you're pulling for, who's pulling the strings, what's going on. Like, so the performances speak a lot to that, but as Winters mentioned earlier, so is the screenplay, a fucking phenomenal script and just brilliantly written, and they nailed it in terms of getting that from page to screen. So,
and I'll second the score. The Trent
score's so
Reznor and
good.
Atticus Ross, I mean,
So good,
phenomenal score in this movie.
just won the Golden Globe for it, and I hope they can get an Oscar nom for it. It was so good, man. So high energy, just let's fucking drop some ecstasy and do that thing. You know what I mean? Let's go. Play some tennis, I guess. I don't know.
I was about to say, in an all-timer ending, like there's a lot of movies on my list have all-timer endings. This is one that has an all-timer
That was
ending.
good.
I suggested a friend watch it on a plane, and I like watched her watch it. And once it got to that final match, you know what's coming, and you're just really excited for it to happen, and then it happens, and then you have that ending, and you're just like, going out on a high. It's a great conclusion.
For sure.
I love it so much.
Great film. So challengers, runner-up for Nicholas over there. So we are up to our number ones, guys. We will give you our personal favorite film of 2024. Justin Winters, our guest. You get to kick that round off, man. What do you got?
Back to all gas, no brakes. I love movies that really go for it. Like, leave it all out in the field. I love some maximalist filmmaking. I love that, creators who are trying to be inventive and leave their own mark on cinema. My number one is the only film of my list, I'm looking at my top 10, that I watched twice because I watched it once while I was mid-COVID fever and sickness. And then a couple weeks after that, I made my wife watch it just so I could watch her watch it.
Oh, yeah.
And that solidified my love of it. And I'm talking about one that we've already talked about. It's called The Substance. So just like, again, I love me some body horror. I love
Went for it.
The director's previous film mentioned by Gerald, Revenge. If you haven't seen that and you've seen The Substance and you want more of that same feeling, watch Revenge. Forjat is like amazing filmmaker. She's got 2 films under her belt, and they're both all-time bangers. I was grinning ear to ear throughout watching this film because it's just so audacious in its energy. And yes, it is extremely unsubtle, and I think that's the point of the film.
Yep.
It's something that it's a theme that we all recognize. It's a theme that we all recognize, and it's just, yes, it's beaten over the head throughout that film, but you love it because while that theme is being beaten over the head, she keeps upping the ante as you go along throughout the movie until the end of the movie, where I've never the biggest comparison I could think of in film is one of my favorite horror movies, Dead Alive, has that's another film that just keeps upping the ante throughout the film until the end. It's just like blood and guts everywhere, and people just like within the film just wondering what just happened to them. And throughout that end of The Substance, I was like, this is what movies are for. This is cinema. I am gutted that I didn't see this in a movie theater because this would be prime audience experience film. But like I said,
People
I've already
left,
watched
by the
it twice.
People left.
I would have loved
screen,
it.
Which I love.
That's
I'm like, get
amazing.
the fuck out of here. Yeah, it's great.
It's amazing. I just think it's a movie that we're gonna be talking about forever, and I love movies that really go there. Last movie I could think of that I felt this similar way was like, I don't know, like Malignant a couple years ago, where you're just you're either on board or you're not, and if this is your type of movie, you're gonna love it. So happy for Demi Moore and her success and being in the film. It's a very I just can't imagine the acting in a film and putting on this performance that she does. I mean, throughout there's portions where you're like, wow, like she really went there. And I think that's definitely award worthy. She's amazing in it. So that's why it's my number one.
I think that's the great thing about it is she's clearly so invested in the vision that she absolutely commits full throttle to that performance, which I think only heightens it. But two things. Number one, I can't even imagine watching this film in the throes of a COVID fever. Jesus Christ. And then number two, you know what else? I was just thinking about another correlation that I correlate that ending to. It's like in Inglourious Bastards. At the end of Inglourious Bastards, when they take the machine guns and they're literally just shooting Hitler in the face 1,000 times and burning all these Nazis alive. It's so ridiculously unsubtle, but it's literally Tarantino being like, "Fuck you, Nazis." Like it's that same kind of like just absolute like throw the middle finger up, like this is my statement, this is big, bold, and I'm gonna just make that shit as loud as I possibly can. I mean, it's that kind of movie. It really is.
Great pick. Obviously, I agree with you. It was on my list too, but
Another thing I was going to say is like she made the film she wanted to make, and word on the street is Universal, who was helping produce the film, saw that ending and was like, we can't put this out, and she stuck her tongue. She's like, nah, this is the movie I want to make. And then the
Good for her.
movie, MUBI stepped in and was like, okay, we'll put this out, and it was a fucking success. Like it's like good for her. Again, like it's been such a creator driven year of all these directors who are like, okay, here's the movie I'm going to make, like it or not. And I think that takes balls. And I just throughout this movie, I was like, this is a director, this is a creator with something to say, and I think she nailed it.
speaking of horror, let me give you guys my number one. Anybody that knows me personally, that follows the show even, or follows me on Letterboxd, winners, will probably not be surprised because it's also one of my favorite filmmakers, and he did a, I guess, remake / reimagining of one of the great horror pillars of our culture from 1922. The silent film Nosferatu from Murnau was redone by Robert Eggers. That's my number one film of 2024. Before I go on, both of you seen it? Nick, you said you were going to try to check it. Yeah, you need to check it out. You saw it, Winners? All right.
Oh yeah.
No, I hadn't felt well enough until like literally like the last couple days to want to get to the theater. I still like it's still playing in the theater here, so I still have every intention of seeing it. I just it was either try to go to a theater and not necessarily be 100% great doing that, or stay home and just crack out a bunch of stuff I could just rent from Prime. So that's what I did.
Ironically, I think had you seen it, of course I'm speculating, but had you seen it, we may have matched again on our number ones this year. I think you're going to fucking love this thing. So especially being a fan of the 22. But, I've talked about it on the show. I did a episode when Nick was out sick with my friend Nicole, and we covered the film for over an hour. We talked about it, and she also gave it a 10 out of 10, which I didn't know going in when I asked her to come on the show. I wanted a female perspective on it, and she ended up loving it too. We just basically raved about it for an hour. But we already talked about The Craft when I was talking about Villeneuve. It's very similar here with Eggers, but it's on another level because, he did it with really all his films, Northman, Lighthouse, The Witch, and now Nosferatu, where the level of research into the time period, into the portion of the world that the film is taking place, everything is so authentic and so true to historical accuracy. And he, much like you mentioned with Coralie Farjah, he's not, now of course it's Robert Eggers, his name's a little more prominent, but he's not budging on that stuff. He knows that you can't understand The Lighthouse without subtitles. He doesn't give a shit because that's the way those guys would have talked on that rock back then. You know what I mean? And he does the same thing here with Nosferatu in 1830s Germany, Transylvania, etc. And when you get past the craft of the film and you look at the story, it's essentially the story of Dracula. It's very, very similar to the 1922 Nosferatu.
Lies and slander. I don't know what you're talking about.
But it's told from a different POV, and we really are following Ellen in this movie, which is portrayed by Lily Rose Depp here. It was initially supposed to be Anya Taylor-Joy, which would have also probably been great. But Lily Rose absolutely floored me. I know who she is. I knew of her. I've probably seen her in a couple things, some smaller parts. But after seeing her in this, I was absolutely just flabbergasted at her performance and her dedication to this role. No visual effects were employed in some of the things that she does with her body in this movie. The way it's contorted, the way she's basically spasming at different points throughout the film. All of that was in the take, on camera, and it's 100% her. And then Skarsgård's transformation, guys, is Count Orlok. Holy fucking shit. I know it's been somewhat spoiled on social media. I know Nick hasn't seen it. I don't want to spoil anything about the specifics, but I will just tell you it worked for me. And I will also tell you there is no way in hell, none whatsoever, and I'm a movie guy, there is no way if they had not told me that was Skarsgård that I would have known that was him. No shot I would have been able to tell it was him. He was completely transformed. The makeup, of course, is a big part of that, but also his performance and working with an opera coach to get his voice inflection, like this old count, and just so deep and sinister. And he is an ominous presence in this film. And it is just such an intoxicating picture. Like the poster says, succumb to the darkness. And if you do that when you go to see this in the cinema, you will just, I mean, it'll just take you over. It'll be like his shadow hand going over you in the cinema, just like it does her in the film. It's my number one of the year. I knew I was going to love this thing, but I also didn't expect to love it on the level that I did. It even surprised me as an Eggers fanboy. Winners, what did you think of Nosferatu?
So I've actually been hot and cold on Eggers. Like most of the movies, I'm like, yeah, this is good. He's obviously a craftsman, but this was my favorite of his by far.
Mm-hmm.
I love vampire movies, and I love horny vampire movies, especially.
Sure.
Bram Stoker's Dracula, Coppola's film, is like one of my all-time favorites. It's like one of the first first R-rated movies I remember seeing when I was a kid in the theater, which, that's a big thing when you're a kid. So when my mom or dad took me to that movie, and that movie was like pure horniness throughout, and Gary Oldman just slaying throughout. This movie kind of gave me that feeling of like, oh, okay, like here's an Eggers movie where it seems like the actors are kind of having a little bit of fun. Like Willem Dafoe in this movie is like just lights out, just having the time of his
Fucking
life,
berserk.
and you're just like, fucking good for Dafoe. But I would say again, Lily Rose Depp is like the prime standout by far, because I had never seen her in anything but HBO's The Idol, and if anyone's seen that show before, that whole show left me with a bad taste in my mouth. Just
I didn't see her in that even.
Oh, it was it has The Weeknd basically. It's like he's Nosferatu in that show, just preying on her and being super creepy. But in this film, like again, you mentioned she's got some really physical scenes that like echo drop like possession vibes, a female just really good having being overtaken by the role and really feeling it. So I thought it was a great time. I thought it was great. And I heard you say it was like one of your favorites of the decade on another podcast, and I'm like, okay. But yeah, I think it's worthy number one.
I did say that. It also speaks to my sensibilities, though. So, that's a bias there for sure. But, I also think this is Eggers, or my favorite film of Eggers, I should say. Also, it's his best made film, in my opinion. But that's also a pretty huge statement, because The Witch from 2017 has always been my favorite, and that one actually is in like my top 25 of all time. So now I'm sitting here going, well, I probably have two Eggers films in my top 25 technically. But I just loved it, and I know Nick's a huge fan of the Silent 22 film, and having that kind of come along with this reimagining and the things that Eggers does in this film to update that story and make it such a like visceral watch, even knowing the story, like even knowing really what's going to happen. It feels so new to you at the same time, and it was quite a feat, and I'm really excited for Nick to see it, and maybe we'll do a little Patreon thing when he gets a chance to catch it, because it's one of the best movies I personally have seen in a long, long time. So it's my number one of 2024, and I guess there's only one movie left to be shouted out here in detail, at least, and I think I might have some idea.
Just say it. Just say it with me.
I tell you what, I'll throw it to you by saying this: if you feel it,
chase it, baby.
All right,
number one of the year with a bullet, at least for now. I mean, I got some other stuff I got to see, which is always the killer of these lists, right? It's always the thing about these lists. But Jesus Christ, do I love Twisters?
You do.
So But first of all, no one's that straight for Glenn Powell. My God, I love him so much. He's so good in this. Daisy Edgar Jones, great in this. Anthony Ramos, great in this. It does not like literally, it's blockbuster movie making. Like literally, it's what blockbuster movies are meant to be. It's big, it's loud, it's bombastic. It's just in your face, fun blockbuster cinema. Like I went into this movie like I seen the original. Like, well, I mean, this is only like a pseudo sort of sequel to the original one, right? But I saw it maybe once in the 90s. Like I don't like slavishly remember it fondly or anything like that. So I went into this with literally the trailers are ridiculous. Like the trailers are just they're chasing tornadoes around in pickup trucks and doing all this YouTube stuff and all this different stuff. I'm like I'm not gonna like this at all. Like I really went into it just very 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 low expectations, completely blown away. I had so much fun with this movie. I don't care how shitty the science of it is of throwing diapers at tornadoes to suck them up. Like, I mean, all that stuff is. I just had so much fun with this. Like this to me is what big budget blockbuster movie making is supposed to be. Just balls to the wall, fun, loud, chaotic, amazing. I loved it so much. Winters is shaking his head like crazy. I love this movie so much, man.
I'll just say, I'll throw it to you, Winters, but I'll just say I fucking love this thing too. I mean, it's nowhere near my top 5, but I mean, I had a fucking blast with it. I think I gave it a 7 or 8 when we talked about it on the show, Nick. But it's just a summer block. It is the definition of summer blockbuster.
Jeez.
If you feel it. It's got Glenn Powell, man.
Nobody's
I
that
think
straight.
He's in the rain in a white T-shirt. I mean, come on.
Nobody's that straight.
I mean, Winters, what are you thinking over there?
So when I saw Nick gave this 5 stars on Letterboxd, and I hadn't seen it, I was like, okay, this is probably gonna be his number 1. I got to see this. I haven't seen this yet, and I hate to be like Dune 2, but I didn't get the love for it. I was literally throughout and saying, what does Nick see in this? And there's one thing he said that might have changed my view. So I was a diehard Twister head. That movie came out when I was in high school, and it was like an event film. I was telling Chrissy about it. I was like, I remember that being one of the first real big films where it's like, this theater has THX audio, like crystal clear, and I just remember the experience of watching that movie in the theater, and the best thing at the time that I could compare it to was oh, it's like you're at Universal Studios almost, but it's the whole film, and you got the wind and all this stuff going on. I love Bill Paxton, and I think the relationship between Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt in the first film was great. I love the Carrie Elwes being the kind of enemy of them. It had Philip Seymour Hoffman, the soundtrack, Van Halen blaring and stuff. So I think maybe me loving that first film, I was supremely not set up in the best way to enjoy Twisters as Nick might have. I will say though that the one thing that I thought was the biggest problem was Daisy Edgar Jones in this movie. I was just like, she's giving me nothing. I love Glenn Powell. I know that he can have extreme chemistry. Anyone who saw him in Hitman this year, you could see that he can have chemistry with his partner, and I just didn't feel that in this with Twisters. I love Daisy Edgar Jones in Fresh with Sebastian Stan.
Really good, yeah.
Those two had chemistry, but I just didn't feel it in this film with them two. So like I said, I didn't hate it. I was just kind of in the middle of just oh, okay, this is this is not as good as the original, but okay type movie. So I tried.
So he didn't feel it. He didn't feel it. So
I was gonna say he didn't feel it.
Chase it. That's exactly what it is.
I mean, she tells him in the truck at the airport. She says,
I ridiculous, loud, fun, crazy, chaotic. Like I said, everything a good, fun summer blockbuster should be, in my opinion. I just enjoyed the absolute hell of it, and it's literally I'm not a country music guy, and literally the whole soundtrack is nothing but country, and I dug the whole soundtrack. It all fits so well, the whole vibe of the movie, literally all of it just gelled together so well for me. It's weird. It's really weird too, because you look at the movie from the outside and you're like, no way that's ever going to touch Nick's any list ever. But it's one of those weird phenomena that where I just watched it and I was just like, Winners, I'm in that theater, like I'm just watching, I'm just like jaw agape. I'm just like, I love this so much.
You got it. It got you at the right time, man. It got you at the right time. So I understand that.
Well,
And
it did.
is
You know what? And this came after a long string of movies on the show in the early spring summertime where they were all like 2.5, 3-star films, all a whole bunch of shit. The Dune 2s, the Furiosas, all that garbage that Gerald made me watch. And I'm like, I need a palate cleanser here. And those tornadoes came right in and cleaned it right up, baby.
Nick's number one of the year. I thought it was a running joke, but it actually is his number one of the year. Twisters. He felt it, guys.
If
he
you
felt
feel it,
and he chased it right up to the top of his fucking list there.
Hell
so
yeah.
I commend you, buddy. It is a great popcorn flick. I'll give you that. All right, Winners, the guest over there. Just give me like 5 or so honorable mentions real quick that you didn't get to throw into your 5 there. What do you got?
Oh man, there's so many. If I just round out my top 10, another amazing movie that I saw only one time, but I really want to watch again this year was called I Saw the TV Glow, which is a movie. When I was watching it, I actually thought of Nick, because I know he is a 90s guy. We've talked about loves of that nature, but I Saw the TV Glow is a movie that is a trans allegory. It's got a definite vibe to the film that you kind of have to be on or not be on. But I loved it. I was kind of just blown away by it. It's got one of the most heartbreaking scenes of any film that I've probably seen this year. At a birthday party. If you've seen the film, you probably know the scene. But my heart literally broke at the end of that film, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. It's about memory. It's about nostalgia. It's about looking at your life and seeing if it's the way you thought it would become. Which again, I think is a theme that kind of resonates with us all. So I think it's a very special film. I Saw the TV Glow. The Fall Guy, probably my favorite action film of the year.
Hell yeah.
Probably the most fun. I mean, if you like action movies, if you like movies in general, Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, I think it's an amazing film.
Absolute love letter to stunt work too. I love that so much about it.
And then last 2 shout outs, Hundreds of Beavers is a film that I did not know existed until I watched it. And then after I finished watching it, I was like, that's probably the only movie that will ever exist like that. It is really unique. It is unlike anything I've ever seen. I would describe it as a Looney Tunes, live action Looney Tunes cartoon that goes on probably a bit too long, but just the craft involved and the creativity involved is amazing. And then the last one is a movie that the first movie I watched this year is an animated film out of Latvia called Flow. Another film that kind of I didn't know anything about, hadn't seen a trailer, watched it, and I was like, oh, this is like, that movie as a kid, The Incredible Journey, one of my favorite films about some animals who have lost their way. You have a found family sometimes in times of extreme elements. I mean, this is a movie that kind of even resonates more for me, considering everything we're going on in Los Angeles. Sometimes you have to reach out, and you never know who will be helping you get through these things. So I highly recommend everyone watch Flow. It's an amazing film.
And Flow's a unique one too, because there's no dialogue in that film. It just the cats are drawn and portrayed like, and the animals are drawn like actual animals, like they would act, meow, bark, whatever. Like there's no talking animals, or there's no people even in that movie. And it really is more about the journey and about the story. I love that film too. I saw it actually very recently. I had a screener for it, and it blew me away, man. It was really, really good. Nick, what honorable mentions did you want to shout out there that didn't crack the top 5 for you, buddy?
I mean, Winner's already threw The Fall Guy in there. Again, love that. Absolute love letter to stunt work, and just movie making in general. So I absolutely love that. Wicked, got to get some Wicked love in here. Even though the first 2/3 of it is indescribably long, Still the magic of it worked for me, even though Gerald was like, this movie set in the magical land of Oz is too colorful.
Yeah. It looked like My Little Pony and Rainbow Bright had a baby.
Good Lord in heaven. Next one, Inside Out 2. I really love it, even though the whole movie didn't hit for me. But I mean, if you've anybody that's ever dealt with anything anxiety related, I think it's absolutely going to hit home with you. Civil War. I know G Money is a big fan of that one as well. And I'll round out my top 10 with winners is number 1, The Substance. I had to crack it into the top 10 there.
Well, for me, just to round up my top 10 real quick, Nick just mentioned Alex Garland's Civil War. That was the one I had at number 5. I switched it with Sing Sing, even though they're pretty much tied, just because I wanted to talk a little bit more about Sing Sing. But I love Civil War. I think the kind of neutral approach of that film really works, and it really brings you on the battlefield with those photojournalists, and the performances across the board are stellar. The animated film that I put on my list is different than y'all's, so that's kind of cool, but it's The Wild Robot. That's the story of parenthood and motherhood and kind of figuring it all out, and the way that movie portrays that is breathtaking, and Lupita Nyong'o gives an absolute out-of-this-world voice performance as this robot who is kind of gaining this intelligence throughout the movie and essentially is a different robot by the end of the film, and has those feelings of that a maternal figure would have. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, would be my number 8. Holy fucking shit, dude. George Miller doing his thing. I know I love Fury Road, but this is right up there with me, guys.
Thank fuck we know the origin of the organic mechanic now.
This
Oh my
is it
god.
right here. Furiosa,
Questions
man.
finally answered.
Nick's wrong about that one. So Nick's wrong about this one. He might be right, a little right about Dune, but Furiosa rocks.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Bag.
He mentioned Thelma already, would have been my number 9. And my number 10 would have been a little indie comedy that actually packs a pretty heartful punch, too, that not a lot of people talked about, not a lot of people have seen. It's actually on Amazon Prime right now if you want to stream it. But it's called My Old Ass, which is not a documentary about my life, Nick. It stars Aubrey Plaza and the young Maisie Stella, who is really the primary star of the film. And it's like a time travel film, so Aubrey Plaza is the older version, 20 years later, of her, who goes back to 2003 to kind of coach her younger self through some of these trials and tribulations of love, etc. And it's a very emotional film, which was unexpected, but it's also hilariously funny. And like I said, it was probably my biggest surprise of the year. Like, I really, really like this thing. I remember when I hit play on it, I was like, that's probably all right, kind of cute or whatever. And I walked away. Obviously, it's in my top 10 of the year. I loved it. So, My Old Ass. Did you see that one, Winners?
I did. I wasn't as hot on it as you are, but I really like the young actress who I'd never seen in anything but this. I think she's really talented. So,
yeah, it was great. All right, so there you go, guys. That was our collective top 10, maybe and then some, I don't know, of 2024. Nick, it's always a pleasure well, I don't know if pleasure is the right word, but I'm always here to talk to you. Winners, dude, stay safe out there in California. The news is it's like literally watching a science fiction horror movie from like 20 years in the future. I mean, it's crazy. I know you guys are going through it out there, man. I can't thank you enough for being on the show and taking time to do this. You know we love you. We love Chrissy. We love the family. So take care of yourself. You never have anything to promote when you come on here.
No. I would say so. Instead, I would say everyone stay safe out there. Climate change is coming for us all. G Money knows North Carolina just went through it last year. Now we're dealing with fires now. I suggest everyone get their go bags in mind wherever you may be, because this stuff is happening more and more. But I want to say thank you to both you guys. Like I said at the top, this is a respite from stress. I love talking movies with you guys. I've known you for a long time now. I was just on the countdown talking to those guys earlier. I just left a message with them and was kind of reminiscing how long we've all known each other.
I know. It's crazy.
And how our love of movies has kind of brought us together and kept us together. Still talking to this day. So, like I said, always a pleasure. Love talking movies anytime with you guys. If Nick wants to take a break from complaining about the programming of your podcast, I will step in at any time as long as weather conditions are okay here.
I think I'm going to let I think in 2025 I'll let Nick come up with the movies, and that way
he's
can't
already
complain
he's
too
already
much.
going to make me watch Captain America, whatever the hell that's called. It's going to be the biggest piece of shit.
So
I can't wait to absolutely take a dump on it.
I-
I'm
That's
gonna hate
coming
it
up in
so much.
February.
I just love listening to you guys argue about shit. It's just like, you know,
Yeah,
I've
well,
known you so
what are you gonna
long
do?
that I kind of predict how you'll react to movies, and I think that makes it a great listen. So
Well, we appreciate you, man, without a doubt. Next week, Nick and I will get together and hopefully not argue, but we're going to try to get out and go see Lee Winnell's new, another reimagining or kind of remake of a classic film, but he's going to be doing Wolfman, which was supposed to initially star Ryan Gosling, but it's Christopher Abbott in that lead role now, and it actually looks really good from the trailer I saw. And he just
I mean,
did
I'm
The Invisible
excited
Man a few years
big
ago,
time
which
for
was
this
awesome.
one after Invisible Man. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what he's got for Wolfman.
Yeah, so let's check that out. We'll get together next week, Nick, and talk about that. Once again, winners, thanks so much for being here. That was our 2024 wrap up, and we're on to 2025 now. I guess winners, go ahead and mark your calendar for 1 year from now.
That's right.